It's a really interesting concept, and it's one that, like, when I'm teaching, I actually talk about with students and stuff about the concept of a performance persona, which can draw in elements of your like real life person, but you also get to choose how much of that you want to share in your performance persona, or whether you want to keep some boundaries around that and keep some of it for yourself. But it always needs to feel authentic, whatever it is, however crafted it may be, and however much it's your voice or the conglomerate voice of all the people driving the machine. It still needs to feel authentic in the moment, because it's you and the relationship with the crowd that's at play there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you start reading scripts in your head, you know, they know you're not there.
Yeah.
They know right away. So,
yeah,
they're going to give you a little bit of attention. And if you're direct with them and you're, you know, as you say, I think authentic is a good word. Then they might stick around. Right.
Yeah.
But they'll give you that bit of time. And if you're not, they won't be around.
Yeah. Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. All right, we are here with Bill Henderson today, and you will know Bill from his work as a singer, songwriter, producer, and engineers in the musical projects like The Collectors, Chilliwack, UHF, and most recently, probably Haida recording artist Terry Lynn Williams Davidson. Chilliwack hits like My Girl, Fly at Night, and What You Gonna Do, among so many others, still receive regular radio play today. Along the way, Bill won both Juno and Genie Awards, as well as having been inducted into the Western Canadian Music Awards Hall of Fame and the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, and being appointed to the Order of Canada on top of that. He's served as past president of SOCAN and the Songwriters Association of Canada, and past co-chair of the Canada Music Council. You have been a busy guy, Bill. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Sarah. Happy to be here.
Do you want to add to the
accolades?
Fill it out a little bit. Tell us, for our listeners who might not, you know, just a little bit about your journey in the biz and how you got where you are today.
Yeah. You know, in 1967, I think it was, we were in San Francisco. We were the Collectors, and we were playing at the Fillmore, and Bill Graham got up and introduced us as the band that was taking music where it was going. How about that? That was amazing, right? And he may well have gotten that from Jerry Garcia, who was the guy, you know, from the Grateful Dead, who introduced us to Bill and got us in there, because the Dead had come out and played in Vancouver, and we'd played with them, and Jerry really liked the band. So, you know, it was really interesting because he said that, and we were like a psychedelic band. Mm-hmm. and we did the weirder and wilder we could come up with. That's what we put in, right? Yep. That's where we were going, and introducing, you know, like new things into music, or into pop music anyway. And but man, did that ever change?
Yeah.
Like right after he said that, the world took a left turn, right? and there we were, gasping for air. And meanwhile, you know, the next gig we played there, we played with Albert King, mm-hmm. which didn't work for us at all.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't work at all. And this whole other thing was happening. The blues thing had always been strong underneath, but was starting to come up, right? Yeah. And a whole other approach to music that, to my mind, almost culminated with the Eagles, with that sort of perfection. Yeah. Absolutely perfect sort of a resonating heavily with Americana, with all kinds of American style. With them, it was, a lot of country that was in, but pop was very much part of what they did too. And so we had all the guys in the band. I mean, we'd all played country, we'd played pop, we'd played everything. We cut our teeth on the American songbook, playing for people who were dining and dancing, so we knew all that stuff. And we were going, like, why are we messing with this shit? Why aren't we doing the new thing, right? Why don't we just, let's explore, right? And there were a lot of musicians who agreed with that. And Jerry Garcia was one, but, and Lord knows Frank Zappa, and a number of people were doing that kind of thing. But I'll tell you and on the West Coast, that was happening. At that time, that was happening. And when we went across to the other coast, like in the States, we toured across, went through the Midwest and then down to, we played New York and Boston and a bunch of places like that. And it was different. It was different. The American groups there and the ones coming over from England who sometimes didn't get much farther than the East Coast. We didn't see so much of them on the West Coast because it was expensive, all of that, a lot of travel. But those bands that came over from England, I mean, they were tight. They were so tight. They were really like super tight. And all of the people around the what do you call that? That's the Northeast, like whatever you call it, the Atlantic coast there in America. I forgot
Eastern Seaboard.
Eastern Seaboard. That's the one. That's what they use. Yeah. And it was a lot more R&B than what we were doing. The R&B influence was in there more in their sort of advanced bands, in their not everyone had R&B bands, but these were guys that were wearing funny colors and all that sort of stuff, so like they were quote unquote new, but they were playing very much R&B. So our little thing that seemed like it was changing the world was actually just in a little bubble.
Yeah.
And it was West Coast, San Francisco to Vancouver was like a freeway of musicians and music. We were really connected. Even LA was a little beyond that, they had the Doors, but they were generally a little closer to the bone than we were, not quite so far out. So, that was the beginning of our recording career. The Collectors was our beginning of our recording career. That first album had a 20-minute, one side was 18 minutes long, a continuous piece called the What Love Suite, and it sort of blew people's minds on the West Coast quite a bit. It was really a strong response to it. And in KSAN, which was I think it was the first FM station in the States, so, which would make it the first one in North America, they played it like it was a single. They played it like a couple times a day, right? Wow. In this thing. And they were huge fans of this thing. So we felt like we were, holy crap, like there was Sgt. Pepper's and then there was the Collectors.
Yeah.
And continuing the tradition of breaking down the barriers, right? And but people don't think of Chilliwack that way. And those who remember the Collectors, those who were actually there, they know what it was. But no one realizes that nowadays that there was this thing going on that was so incredible. At least for us, it was, and for the people who were into that kind of music.
Yeah,
but it went away.
Yeah, I think the landscape of music has changed so much over the years, and it has become so globalized and so much less localized that I don't think you have that. I don't think there's the possibility for that same kind of experience now.
No, it is. It is so globalized. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was a new thing, it would spring from somewhere, and then it would just cover. If it's big, it would cover the world, right?
Yeah.
Fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
So here on the Vocal Lab, we aim to shine a light onto the music industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. So with that in mind, if you were starting your career over again now, what would you do differently?
What I would do is I would stand up for my own self more. And I did it quite a bit in the beginning with the collectors for my own view of things, the way I thought things should go. But then I realized that I was not on I was being sort of sidetracked by these other elements in the music world. And so I listened more and I sort of quote unquote behaved myself more and gave up some things I shouldn't have given up. Right. Mm-hmm. That's what I feel like. I feel like that happened, and it took quite a while to sort of come around. In fact, I couldn't really talk to an audience for a long time because the people behind me, I was representing them, and I could never feel comfortable talking to an audience because I felt like I had to say what they wanted said. Right. I'm not talking about memorizing lines. Yeah. I'm talking about having a character that they feel is okay for the front man to have. Right. Because they thought of me as a front man. Right. And that didn't change until I started doing, actually it changed when we took the band. This was Chilliwack by then, in the 80s. We went to the Middle East and and Germany for Canadian troops, right? So we went to entertain the Canadian troops and the other troops that were there. And then I remember my sort of where it broke, and it was really interesting. We'd played for the enlisted guys in wherever, maybe it was Germany, it probably was Germany. And then there was a night where we were to play for the officers. Yeah. So the officers all something like this, right? Because they know what the fuck's going on, right? And we don't know what you're doing up there, but go ahead. So they, they didn't respond to anything, and I started talking, and I talked, and I talked, and I talked, and I said, I guess this is kind of boring, right? And they kind of went like that. I said, well, you know what? It's really boring. You're sitting on your hands. And it just I realized I can say whatever I want. I can just, if that's the truth, just say it. Yeah. Right. And they recognized the truth. They knew what I was talking about. Yeah. It loosened me up. It loosened them up, and it loosened me up. And I realized that I can have a relationship with an audience if I'm willing to just say what's on my mind, and say what's going on. And that changed everything. And then I went out and did solo stuff. And then it was like, okay, you've got to do everything. You're the drums, you're the bass, you're the singer, you're the storyteller. You're not beholden to anyone. You can make a left turn whenever you need to, and just make it work. Just make it great for the audience. That's all I cared about, was doing that. And so I called on all my resources, and it was really cleansing to do the solo thing, right? And then get back with the band and remember that, okay, I can do this, right? Yeah. Now I have to fit into patterns that people can predict because they got to play along with me, right? So we got to do that. And there are certain things, and that's okay. You're a musician. Figure it out, right? So, but I could and often do with Chilliwack. I just stand there and I start talking, right? And people are laughing behind me. It's okay. I don't care.
Well, I think it's a really interesting concept, and it's one that, like, when I'm teaching, I actually talk about with students and stuff about the concept of a performance persona, which can draw in elements of your real life person, but you also get to choose how much of that you want to share in your performance persona, or whether you want to keep some boundaries around that and keep some of it for yourself. But it always needs to feel authentic, whatever it is, however crafted it may be, and however much it's your voice or the conglomerate voice of all the people driving the machine. It still needs to feel authentic in the moment, because it's you and the relationship with the crowd that's at play there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you start reading scripts in your head, they know you're not there. Yeah. They know right away. So, yeah, they're going to give you a little bit of attention. And if you're direct with them and you're, as you say, I think authentic is a good word. Then they might stick around. Right. Yeah. but they'll give you that bit of time. And if you're not, they won't be around.
Yeah. Yeah. They won't buy a ticket a second time.
No, too boring. Yeah.
All right. So if that's what you would do differently,
Yeah.
what did you do right in your career? What would you do all over again the same way?
Well, I was adaptable, and that was good. Like, because as the scene changed, I changed with it, right? And things happened. Like, Ross and I kind of ran the band for a while. Like, we what we did was we went to go from psychedelic. What were we going to go to? I was totally blown away with Albert King that night. I watched him, and I couldn't believe what happened, what he could do with like 3 notes, right? It was just amazing. And I loved it. It was great. So we started to morph into more of a playing band, more of a jamming band. We didn't care so much about structures and coming up with arrangement elements that were really interesting and different and stuff like that. No, that wasn't it. It became a trio. And it was just Ross on drums, Claire on sax, flute, and bass, and me on guitar and bass. And we would switch the bass around. But, this was our response to the changes that were happening. So that flexibility was important. And that system worked really well. What we did, we jammed. We were a jamming band. We didn't know. Well, there were about 3 songs that we knew we were going to play in our set, but we didn't know in what order. And I'd flip into some old country song just because I felt like it. And Claire would do whatever. He was so incredibly malleable and still is to this day. Like, I've gone back to working with him again because I miss that, There's not many people who can do that. He's there with you every moment, and every nuance. He's feeling it and responding to it. And then you're responding to him, and it's like magic happening, right? It's communication between people. And, so that flexibility was important, and then it became more pop, and it was the Eagles. So we did Fly at Night, and we did Baby Blue, and stuff like that. And then it was the 80s, and we did and Ross was gone and Brian was there, and we did some really amazing records, and My Girl Gone Gone Gone, and I Believe, and stuff like that. What You Gonna Do? And so again, that was being flexible and responding to the situation. But it's a real art in your life, isn't it? To just like, okay, respond, but be yourself. Yeah. Change, but be the same. What part changes? What part stays the same? So I would just go, oh shit, just give it up. Right. Okay. Yeah. Now with Brian, now we're doubling parts, and they have to be so perfect you can't even tell it's a double. That's how good they have to be. Yeah. And if you got it good for this whole phrase, but one note's off, don't think you're going to get away with that. Don't think having it a little fraction different, you're going to get away with that. No way. It's got to be perfect. Brian and I became producers and went around producing other people, and we did the punching on the machine, not the engineer. Yeah. Because we knew precisely where we were, and the engineer knew approximately where we were, but we knew exactly. So, we would do that, and we created records that had that level of perfection in them. I remember one engineer saying early on, when a guy that I'd worked with for years, actually, and we're doing this, and Brian, he's doing this. It's on this album we made called Breakdown in Paradise, a song called Guilty. And he played a vibraphone solo on Guilty. And then he doubled it. And he doubled it so precisely and it had to be exactly right. And I bought it. I bought where he was going. I went, good. Let's do that. No, we got to punch it. Do it again. Punch it right here. This is before we got to punch it in ourselves. Punch it right here. Just like that. Right. I tell the engineer everything. And at a certain point, we had done a lot of records together. And he said to me, why are we doing this? It's fine. What's the problem? And I said, yeah, I know, but listen to the sound. Because when you get that level of perfection, there still is little tonal differences that make the stereo field expand and contract and do all this kind of, the sound becomes, it's like, you can't get that with a machine.
Nope.
Because whatever you set it up to do differently than the original track, it does it consistently. Even when you put it random, it's random consistent. Yeah. And it just, you can't get, there's only one way to get it, and that is to be there doing it, and with yourself, with that double track, and listening and going, okay, is that doing it? Is that creating what we want? Right. And always listening. Yeah. So anyway,
I think that level of perfection that you're talking about too, it's been so computerized in current day music with like everything goes through auto-tune, Melodyne, everything. Whereas then you were getting that level of perfection orally, like by doing it again and again until it was a perfect double. And but it has so much more texture when you do it naturally than when you do it with a computer. And I will always and forever prefer the real double over the auto-tuned stuff. But that's personal preference.
Well, I agree with you. Yeah.
Now, I'm not specifically asking for people so much as the relationships, but you can talk about it however you want to. What have been the most important relationships in your career?
Yeah, with my fellow musicians, they're like that's totally important. Yeah. As we shared a lot, I have had relationships with musicians that are fractious. Not that we've actually openly fought, but we did not like each other. Mm-hmm. He didn't like me and I didn't like him. And we worked together for years. Then there were other musicians that were so warm and so willing to work with what you come up with, and then you work with what they come up with, and there's this thing that happens, and it's really a nice thing, and so that's been really important. Another thing that's been really important is the business people around me too, the managers especially. Like, I always needed somebody to sort of kind of father figure type of thing, and I found those people, and they were important to me, and for whatever it's worth, it was important to me. I needed it. And it wasn't always managers. Sometimes it was record company people. Mm-hmm. And I had some wonderful relationships with record company people. And as much as many times I've railed against record companies publicly, but that's not the people so much as what the lawyers have created in contracts that are considered, oh, well, this is what you sign. I'm sorry, this is what you sign. This is what we do. And until you're, when you're Elvis or Bruce Springsteen, then you can tell us what you want. Jesus. There's so much stuff baked into those contracts that's unfair to artists. It's not about fair. It's about money, right? That's what it's about. And, they're investing money. So, I can understand that. And we always used to make records with record companies. And nowadays you don't have to do it. But we did have to. And if we wanted to make another record, we better have a hit on this one, and so we better talk to them about what they're looking for. And we better try and work with that. And because, we had to have that relationship because they're putting money out. If they're not getting their money back, they're like, bye,
Yeah.
And you might not be able to.
That's business.
Yeah, it's business, and you might not have the scratch to record a record. Yeah, so you need them. Yeah, but you don't need them as much as you used to. You need them for push more now than. Yeah. And then my relationship with my wife was really important for the music. Yep. I tell a lot of people, I've said many times, I've done many songwriter workshops, and I said, I talk about how you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You do it, but you don't know what it is a lot of times. And so when my wife would hear me playing something, because I usually wrote in the kitchen, I like the company and she's making food or whatever. And so I'm just kind of writing, I'm playing my guitar and if something comes up and I'm playing it and she goes, "Oh, that's nice. What is that?" And I'd go, "I don't know." But now I'd start working on it, right? Yeah. And because she recognized something, and a lot of times I could not tell. So I really valued that, and then I really valued the other of the two things she said to me that were ultra important. The other one was I liked it better before.
Yep.
Yeah, because we have to craft our songs. I mean, every once in a while you get a gift and you don't have to do any crafting. It's just like it comes out, and that's really amazing. I've had those and I love that. But most of the time you have to do some crafting, right? So, and it becomes a matter of how do you get out of your own way? How do you keep from massacring a great idea? And how do you even know when you massacred it? I didn't. Most of the time at first, I'd be like, I do all the, I can do this and it's really fancy and it's really cool. And everybody likes to hear that and boom, 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 boom. And she'd go, "I liked it better before."
Because you can overwork it and take the magic away.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a light touch that's really important. And you can't always do it the same day. I got a song right now. We recorded 2 songs a few weeks ago. We've been playing them for, almost a year. Well, we haven't been playing for a year because of COVID. So I don't know, 3/4 of a year or something like that. And one of them was written, I started it in 1974. and I always loved this. I had a first line and I had a title. Maybe it was a couple lines. I think it was a couple, and a title and these really nice chords and a nice melody and all of that. And I did not know what to do with it. I could never finish it. I tried, never. And a couple of years ago, it started circulating in my head again. Yeah. It's kind of miraculous how that happens. And it just kept going. And COVID and recent circumstances, social circumstances, kind of focused me for it. And I finished it and we're recording it. You don't always know what to do with your song. And that was a case in point. That took like 40 years or whatever it was. Almost 40 years. Yeah.
So to all the budding songwriters out there, don't ever throw away your ideas.
No.
Sometimes they take 40 years to come to fruition. I had that experience. I mean, I think for me, it was about 15 years from start to finish. It was just stuck in the middle. Yeah. But finally it got finished, but you got me beat. We do the math on that. I think it's actually closer to
it's 48. It's 48 years. Yeah.
Well done, sir.
Yeah. So, you don't know. And then other times, you write something and you realize that you've made a basic error. Yeah. And you can go back, there's good stuff, but you made a real fundamental error and you can back up and a lot of times you can adjust it. I wrote this one song. It's another one that we just recorded of the 2 songs and it was a response to a politician. It was a response to, the then premier of Alberta, Rachel Notley, who was trying to characterize British Columbians as people who didn't care about their oil and gas and were just out of spite trying to stop these pipelines, and she pitted Albertans and British Columbians against one another for political purpose. Yeah. It made me so angry. And I was sitting there with my guitar one day and I just swept up on just a plain old G chord. And started going, saying, I was kind of going, the way you say to someone who's being really unreasonable, and you say, "All right. Okay. All right. here's what we should do, right?
Yeah.
So the song goes, all right. Can we try to make it all right? So I was saying that. And then I started saying things like, if orcas survive in the sailor's sea, it ain't going to hurt your economy. And if water and air's fresh and clean, it won't take a job from a working man. That was my first verse. And all right. Can we try to make it all right? And then I realized that the negativity of that was going to make it difficult for people, right? To get next to it. Mm-hmm. And I also realized that there were many other things going on in the world that are problematic, where we need to change, and things are tough, things are heating up, all of that. And so I ended up changing it to, all right, we're going to make it all right. Mm-hmm. And if this, then that changes, if the orcas survive, it's not going to be a problem. That's not a problem. Mm-hmm. If the environment's in good shape, that's not a problem, right? We're going to make it all right. It's going to be good. And now we play it for people. It's the last song the second last song in the evening. And a lot of times the audience, they're just got their arms on their shoulders and swaying. Yeah. And they're going, all right, we're going to make it all right. And they go, because it just makes them feel better.
Yeah.
What are we here for, right?
Yeah.
So why not make things comfortable for people if you can do it, so.
Well, and if that, especially because I think songwriters are storytellers, and I think if we can position things in a way that brings people in rather than pushes them away, you're going to accomplish a lot more with your storytelling.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. That's an old piece of wisdom. Yeah. I'm not saying you're old.
But you're not saying I'm old either.
I knew your mom and dad, I knew them in 1964.
Didn't you and my mom go to UBC together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was in the music department. I was in the music department. Your dad by then was gone from the music department. I don't know if he spent time there or not. He was never at. Okay.
No, he went to UCLA for a while, but he was never in school up here.
But I knew him because of, the music industry, and because he and Hoot and Griff worked together so much. And Hoot was when my first year there, I think he was still in the school. Yeah. I believe so. There were some really great musicians in there. And so I knew these people. So it's amazing to talk to you. It's kind of cool.
Our families go way back.
They go
I
back.
actually have footage of an episode. I believe it's the Let's Go show that my parents worked on, and Griff and Hoot and all those guys worked on, and the Collectors were the musical guests on that show. Right. So there you are.
Your dad was the host.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so.
I've got that video.
Or maybe it was his TV special that you got. I can't remember. I've got a couple of them, but there you guys are. And I have to tell you that you were responsible for more record needles in our house than anyone else, because when Josh was about 2, he was fascinated with the song My Girl.
Yeah.
And he would he would literally in diapers, and he would pretend to snap. He thought he was snapping. He would flick his thumbs like this, and he couldn't even really talk yet. And he'd go, gong, 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 gong. And he would go into the living room, and he would turn the record player on and then just smash the needle down because he wanted to hear gong, gong.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
I had to buy a lot of record needles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That song with those words, it's something a kid of that age could actually get into. Gun,
Yeah.
gun, 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 gun. Yeah.
Musicians come in all shapes and sizes in terms of being having different levels of formal education.
Yeah.
You have your formal education. You got your bachelor's degree from UBC in music. No, you got some of your bachelor's degree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I have one of those too. Some of my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
But so you know your way around your theory and all of that. How has that impacted your work? Or has it not?
Yeah, no, it has definitely impacted it big time. Well, first of all, I got a lot of perspective from it, and only by going through that program or partway through that program would I have ever heard of John Cage.
Yep.
And ever thought of a concept of music that happens by chance.
Yeah.
Or music that's just completely different than anything we considered to be music before, right? And so that opened up my mind. And so, for the collectors, I think for Claire too, because he took the program as well. I think he did graduate. Maybe not, because we went down, we were going to go and record and he couldn't continue. I think that's what happened. But anyway, yeah, we both sort of picked up on some of these things, and Charles Ives with this, two keys at once. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And
not super listenable, but interesting.
No, but interesting. Exactly. So, there's a limit to what you can do with these things, but it opens your mind, right? So it did that. And then it confirmed the grid in my mind, because I already had a grid that was about intervals and harmony. Mm-hmm. And I had that grid from being a guitar player, from observing, the sounds of different intervals and stuff, and realizing that if I knew what that note was, then I would know what that one was and what that one was. So, relative pitch, right? Yeah. And so it confirmed that and developed it further. So those things. And the other thing that it did, which is not necessarily so great, is it gave me more of an intellectual view of music. Mm-hmm. And that's where we part with blues. Yeah. That's where we part with dance. It's you can still use your intellect, but it is not the focus, right? Yep. It is not the focus. But it became the focus for me, because one of the things about universities that I find really almost tragic is they are so wrong. They are so about, about that. And the mind, the intellect loves that. The logic loves that. Right, wrong. Music's not there.
No,
right?
Music exists in the gray areas.
Yeah. So that wasn't so helpful, and it was an impediment for a while until I realized, and I just dropped it, right? Mm-hmm. I just dropped it. Because I think the first song where I really did that, and I wasn't thinking about that particularly, but was Lonesome Mary. And Lonesome Mary, I wrote in the time it takes to sing it. And it happened after I'd done about 2 hours of work creating a new garden for May, my wife. Yeah. Digging up in a place where there was full of roots and all kinds of stuff, and big trees around it and everything. So it was really hard work. And I loved it, right? I worked really hard and everything, and I got really tired. And I came back into the cabin we were living in. I just picked up my guitar and just played this great big D chord, and it just felt so good. Just, and then I kept the D drone going, and I slid the triad up so that it was a D on top, but it was actually a B flat chord. Yeah. Right. So that's that's the third, right? So, and then slide it down a half tone, Mary, down a whole tone, also another whole tone, Mary, yeah, back down to D, right? Yeah. And then the thing just poured out. It just poured out. And I never thought in that whole process. I didn't think. It just happened, right? Yeah. And I just felt good. It was physical. And the other thing I learned doing that was many times I played songs for the band that I wanted the band to play, and they felt great when I wrote them, and I played them for the band, and they didn't feel great when I played them for the band, and they didn't think they felt great either. And no, we didn't do it. Mm-hmm. So here's another one where I felt great about it. And I went, now this time I'm going to play this song as long as it takes for me to fully memorize my body position. And everything I'm doing physically, and just keep doing it, check it out. What's going on? Where, how am I sitting? How am I holding the guitar? All these things, right? So then when I went to play it for them, I just assembled myself. I had this in my mind. I had to do this. So I did it. And then I played the song and it worked. Of course, the song was probably a lot better than the ones I played for them before anyway.
It's a great song.
I like that song, but yeah.
I think that's such an important aspect that of performance, whether it's singing it to the guys in your band or whether it's doing it on stage, that it's really unlikely that the magic is going to happen for the first time on stage. For instance, if you haven't like practiced it ahead of time. So that concept of like memorizing how it sits in your body, I think is a really important aspect of making music, and it's one that we don't really talk about a whole lot.
Right. It's really interesting hearing what people who've written songs have to say about them. Right. And, I can't remember what book it is. There's one book I have where it's basically just short interviews with lots of people who've written great songs. And so many of them, you ask them about a few songs and they tell you about them. And then you get to the big one, the really big one. You say, so how did this one happen? I don't feel like I even wrote that song. It just happened. You hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to, in songwriting workshops, I try to tell that to people, like, this is, and of course, you don't know kind of what that is until you've experienced it. And you might think, all kinds of things. And so it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to start writing a great song, but it's about not being in your own way for sure. It is about that. Yeah.
I've talked to other people, and I've certainly had this experience myself, where it feels like that it's not coming from me, that I'm just the conduit for it to come out into the world.
That's it.
And I think the other piece of that is that you have to answer the muse. She doesn't always call twice. Yeah, you got to be there. So if you get that great idea, or what could be a great, maybe it's a shit idea, but maybe it's a great idea. If you wake up with that in the middle of the night, you're not going to remember it in the morning if you don't sing it into your voice memos or note it down or do something so that you can access it again later.
Yeah. Have you done that?
I have. I don't write a whole lot anymore, but in the period of my life when I was doing a lot of writing, I missed out on some potentially great, potentially terrible, who knows, ideas because I didn't. I thought, I'll remember that. I'm too tired. I'll remember that. And I got into the habit eventually of sleeping with a notebook beside my bed. It was before the period of time of iPhones and whatnot. I actually ultimately got myself a little digital voice recorder that I would sleep with beside my bed, so that when something did occur to me in the middle of the night, I could literally just sing it into the voice recorder and then turn it over and go back to sleep. Yeah. And I think there's a piece of that when you're in that mode of creativity fosters creativity. Yeah. So like when I say I don't really write much anymore because I'm out of the habit of doing it. But when I was doing it, I was doing a shit ton of it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you learn that you have to show up when she calls.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's also interesting what happens in dreams too, because like I always, I'd have these dreams about music and that just sounded amazing to me, and I could never remember them either. I always thought, how could I forget that? But you don't remember. So So I got, this was in cassette days. I had a cassette machine, play, record, hit the two buttons at once. And so I ended up putting one beside my bed and one night I got this wonderful idea and the machine was there. So I did that and I sang it into the machine and thought, this is great. And then I played it in the morning and it was like, I guess I didn't show up for the Muse after all. So now I just get up and grab the guitar if it really feels that great.
Yeah.
A lot of times it'll be like something to do with a song that I'm already writing, and something will come up and like, wow, that fits really well. And it's actually worth it to get up and use the voice memos or whatever and just sort of play it and listen and get it. Yeah.
I mean, I've also heard a differing perspective on that. My brother says, if you don't remember it the next day, it wasn't worth remembering.
Yeah.
So, each to their own.
Yeah, really.
But
who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
We just work with what we get, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part 1 of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part 2. Can't wait to see you then.